So I'm about 12 hours in, and the hallucinations have begun. Not from the sleep deprivation, of course, but from the dream psychedelics. I just went to go take a shower, and I thought there was this big thing standing outside my door. It's gonna be wild. So the first dream psychedelic, and these are both completely legal, is called Silene capensis. It's also known as Silene undulata, and it's a native plant to the eastern Cape of South Africa. This is known as the White Ways or the White Path. It's used by the Xhosa people as a sacred plant, and it's used to induce vivid lucid dreams and is used during the initiation of shamans. I've had some experience over the years with this plant, with this root, and commonly you usually have to build up a bit of a base before you start feeling the effects. So for a few days you'll take it in the morning. I like to just chop up the roots and put them in a pill form rather than make the traditional drink, and it seems to work easiest. But I will say that the results I've had in the past were incredible. I'm naturally somebody who has extremely vivid and complex dreams, and as far as I can remember, this dream root kind of made everything more solid, I would say. And it's been a while since I've taken it, so I may not remember that clearly. But it's definitely a very powerful dream psychedelic for sure. I think the last time I did it, I remember I got this sense of like the spirits or I don't know what you would call it, maybe the guardians, or like, let's just say the spirit of the root. Something in the dream realm said, stop coming here. And so I stopped for a while. But here we are. I remember one dream I had was, one part of a dream, I was laying down and there was this golden dragon, and I remember feeling that I was about to learn all of the secrets to the universe, and then the dragon came down and bit my throat. And I think in that moment, either the dream changed or I woke up, something changed, and then I had no recollection of any kind of information. I just remember having that feeling like, oh, I'm about to learn everything, which I think is common with psychedelics. The second dream psychedelic is synaptolepsis kirki, or the African dream root. Let's look up the definition. Let's go in depth here. It's traditionally used to produce clear visions when entering trance and to help diviners gain clarity. The root is said to help one communicate with one's ancestors and to lead to visionary and prophetic dreams, and to aid in divination and in gaining answers to specific questions. That's what I'm talking about. 300 milligrams is enough to dry, or is sufficient to elicit lucid dreaming. So I am taking about 2 to 2.5 grams in 3 doses over, I don't know how long I'm gonna wake up. I don't know how long I'm gonna stay awake, but it's gonna be at least like 36 hours, so 6 doses of Silene capensis and 3 doses of African dream root. And we're gonna stay African for this episode because I also have this other dream psychedelic called galantamine. But what I found with this one is that it's so powerful that I don't really want to mess up the synergy that I think these other two plants really have. Galantamine is more of a synthetic extract of a different plant, and plus I've had some bad experiences with galantamine, so maybe for another video. You know, I don't actually remember having any experiences with synaptolepsis. Synaptolepsis? Yeah, I don't recall any experiences with that. And so really my intentions for this project, I would say there's a few main things. Firstly, my intentions would be to call upon the highest good, to reveal any kind of wisdom or information that I can share with the world that would be of great benefit, that would help relieve suffering, that would promote well-being and unity, that would promote love, or perhaps just anything that the world needs to hear. And then secondly, to seek wisdom about any areas in my life where I may be unconscious, or that I can improve, or that I should be aware of, so that I can make a more beneficial impact with my words and my actions. Other than that, I really have no expectations or intentions of what's going to happen. But I will describe my dream after I finally fall asleep and see if there's any kind of gold nuggets that we can uncover that may be of use to the people of the world. I remember one year I had volunteered at the Electric Daisy Carnival, an EDM festival. And as you may or may not know, it goes until like 4 or 5 in the morning. So, you know, we were up all night. And when I got back to the hotel and I went to sleep, I remember I had a dream, and I was so tired at the time. And I remember waking up from that dream feeling like, wow, I just lived an entire lifetime in this dream. So I'm curious to see what it will be like to be far more sleep deprived and to add these powerful dream psychedelics on top. So I will see you at the 24-hour mark. So I'm about 24 hours in, no sleep, plenty of coffee, and a bit of I've almost completed my dream psychedelic dosages. I've got another in about 6 hours, and the final one about an hour before bedtime. Last night it was really boredom that was the most difficult part, but I ended up finding something to do. So that was what I've actually noticed is that time is going by really quickly. It's interesting how time changes when you've had no sleep. So I'd like to just go over last night real quick. Just some notes that I've jotted down. Okay. Yeah, last night there was a lot of fear, a lot of negative thoughts, some anxiety, definitely some hallucinations. I would keep seeing like faces and figures, and there was this constant like feeling, oh, I'm about to see something scary. And it was really just the mind playing its silly games as usual. Last night when I was working on project. I was in FL Studio, and that's a digital audio workspace where you can work on music and different things, just audio in general. And I had some rain sounds in there, and I was wearing headphones. And this was exactly at midnight when this happened. But I was working on something, and then for some reason the volume just blasted, and just like this really loud burst of white noise in my ears. But surprisingly, I really wasn't that affected by that. It didn't really scare me or nothing. I mean, it may have startled me at first, but yeah, I really contribute the negative thoughts to the fact that I've been in this kind of contraction phase lately. And all that means is that if you imagine like a sine wave that goes up and down and up and down, it's just a point where you're kind of at a lower frequency state. So I've kind of been overeating, smoking tobacco, and both those things could definitely create some chaotic energy in the body. If you think about it, thoughts are energy. They're electrical impulses in the brain. So whatever food that you eat, it's going to have a big impact on the thoughts that you have. The quality of food is the quality of energy. But yeah, that's about it for last night. Maybe about 12 more hours to go. I'm debating whether or not I'm gonna make a video or maybe just ramble on this one. I'll probably just make another video. I'll see you in 12 hours. The absolute worst trap for the spiritual person, the most dangerous thing that you will find on the spiritual journey, is to fall in the trap of spiritual bypassing. I consider myself somebody who spends most of their time reflecting upon myself and really just staying as best I can as a non-attached awareness. And things seem to get really dangerous because on one end you see things very clearly and it feels like you know a lot. But then on the other end, you also come from this paradigm of, well, I really know nothing. And so sometimes you question whether or not your actions are the right actions or not. And it's easy to kind of just justify any particular action in the name of spirituality. For instance, here is where I've been at lately. So I don't really operate from the paradigm of right or wrong, good or evil. And of course, to any normal, rational-minded person, it just sounds ridiculous. But you see, I can tell myself that because I know that we are all one, that everything is unity, and that the darkness and the light are both equally important to the whole, to the dynamic play of life. One cannot be without the other. Well, then it's very easy to justify one's actions to be almost completely irrelevant. What does it matter? Who cares if in the grand scheme of things nothing really changes, nothing really happens? The universe is always in balancing itself out. So no matter what happens, it will always return to equilibrium. So does it really matter so much what we do? And also, it's easy to come from the paradigm that everything is exactly how it needs to be. God's plan is perfect in every way. Don't you assume that He is calculated? Or probably doesn't need to calculate, but is everything not already understood very clearly? Every action that we take, every thought that we think, God already knows everything in our hearts, does He not? So God must know what we're going to do. And so how can we make the wrong action? If everything is exactly in God's divine plan. And the real tough one comes in the idea of free will. If everything is perfect exactly how it is, where does free will come into play? Because we cannot for 1 second act as if free will does not exist. Because treat people as if they don't have free will and see how they react to you. Free will is almost something that what they call a priori, and a priori truth, which means it's true from the very beginning. And that seems to be the right way of looking at free will. It's funny, life. It gets you right in the place you can't see. Right in the blind spot. It's funny, that idea that ignorance is bliss. Because to the person, that's a death sentence. A sentence to a life of slavery. But to the sage or the seeker of truth, that is freedom and liberation. It's really funny how tricky the spiritual path can be. How many detours, how many distractions. So what is there to do? It's almost as if we were doomed from the very beginning. So do we play our role as the doomed? Or do we try hard to improve and to avoid our damnation? What a cruel joke. It always comes back to this. That's why, after all that is said and done, whatever has been said in the past and whatever will be said in the future, whatever has been done in the past or will be done in the future, I have only one message, and that is, seek God with all of your heart. And when you find God, stay with Him. Stay with God. Hold on tightly. Because life sure is a wild ride. And there are the ups and the downs and the beautiful moments. Don't spend your time being so afraid. Don't spend your time feeling so guilty, feeling ashamed. Let go of the anger and the hatred. Because it's easy to see that quote that is always mistranslated. That is, the fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. But it was never the fear of God. It was the fear of being separate from God. And there are many of God's creatures who get cast out into the darkness, into the cold, who get lost and never find their way back home, at least in this life. What are we looking for in this life? What is it that drives us? Because it really can't just be the instincts. And is whatever drives us just a purpose that we give to life? The purpose that we make? There are many traps and many detours on this journey. Many paths that lead to madness. You see, the trap that I'm currently in, hypothetically, and I say that because, of course, it's all just fun and games. I can't decide whether it's best to give up the world, ignore everything, and give God your 100% focus at all times. Dedicate everything to spiritual practice and prayer. And yet what I'm called to do is to just have fun. Because life is about fun. And if you think about it, why would God create the world just so that we ignore it and then focus all our attention on God? Where my mind goes, my current paradigm of reality, you could say, is that you hold on to God first and foremost, but you go and play in the world to your heart's desire. And that's a very dangerous thing, because the moment you see the unity in all things is the moment you no longer really see any difference between right and wrong. And yet there are still forces. There's a force that pulls us down, and there's a force that pulls us up. And so do you let the cards fall where they may? Or do you resist and make what appears to be a choice? Do you put your foot in the ground and say, this is who I am, even though you know that's madness? And so is it madness to take a stance, or is avoiding taking a stance just spiritual bypass? Do we accept our fate, or should we refuse it? If we are damned, if we are sentenced, should we accept it or refuse it? And I guess these questions are only for the madman, because it takes a certain kind of philosopher to spend their time and energy on such ideas. My challenge at the moment, it seems, is how much responsibility do we take? In the beginning, I knew that one must take all of the responsibility of all the things that happen to us, of all of our actions, our emotions, and our thoughts. But it seems as you go further and further down what people call the spiritual path, the spiritual journey, that becomes less and less relevant. And so the question is, how much of it is spiritual bypassing and how much of it is seeing the truth? Because I think the more information you get on the spiritual journey, the more that mind is fed, the more tools it has to trick you, the more ammo for its arsenal. So the hard thing for me is, how much of the game do we play? And how much do we just let it all happen? I mean, what is the truth? Do we have any control or do we not? Do we make choices, or is everything exactly the way it's supposed to be? Because if everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, it doesn't really matter what happens. And if it doesn't matter what happens, then what does it matter what we do? If the only meaning to life is the meaning that we give to it. And yet, look at us. Look at us try so hard to do the right things, to make things right, to make things good. How cute God's God's little creation. Look at us go. Now that's funny. But it's a sick joke, so not that many people actually get it. And if I explain it, then it's just not that funny now. That's why I've thought before. Well, I wouldn't say I thought. The thought came to me that, well, let me ask you. Well, I'll ask you. What is the joke that gets older for every degree it gets colder? I'm not gonna answer. You can figure it out on your own. But I still come back to the same question, it seems. Is that, how much do we let ourselves be doomed? Is there a point in which we can stop? And any normal person would say, well, of course, we can stop anytime we wish. But is that in our nature? Are some predestined to stop themselves before destruction, and are some just more likely never to stop? Is it just probability? A balance of biology and our environment? Where is that choice, that sneaky choice? Do we really make the choice, or is the choice made for us? The choice was made for us. That, sure, you could say there was a choice, but if you had your favorite piece of dessert and a dessert that you didn't really care for, is it really much of a choice? Were you not designed to pick one over the other? But again, you could choose either one, and you could choose not to eat. But is there a choice? Not much of one. And so were you doomed to eat that piece of cake? Or that piece of ice cream? That is your favorite flavor. But we're not talking about dessert. But in the same way, well, if you eat too much cake, too much ice cream, well, then you will get sick. Well, then you will get sick. When you eat too much candy, your teeth will rot. Too much sweets. And that's one of the things I really love about life. And I've come back to this a lot over the years, and that is, life is really like a tightrope balancing act. The moment you lead too much to one side, you fall over. The moment you lead too much to the other side, you fall over. And there's nowhere to rest your arms. From the beginning to the end, it's a balancing act. And some of us seem to be better at falling over than others. Some of us fall with style. So what is to be done? Do we eat the cake or not eat it? Is not life to be enjoyed? But of course, as usual, it's the indulgence that gets us. I've become more and more understanding of the fool who is at the same time wise and completely blind. I think sometimes letting go is the hardest part. Letting go of trying to be someone or something. To let life be as it is. To be with the flow of life. It's just unfortunate that life sometimes causes us to flow into the wrong places. But then again, wrong for who? That is the joke. Yet it is a cruel joke. But at least the ending is not so bitter. Alright, so we are 36 hours into sleep deprivation. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I fell asleep for like 5 minutes on accident. And so that it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, so we're gonna pull another all-nighter. We're gonna take one of these bad boys right here. Now, I think this goes without saying, but don't try this at home. I have quite a lot of experience at misappropriating my mind and doing experiments with my consciousness. I really don't want to be responsible for anybody's psychotic breakdown. I am well versed at riding the waves of madness. I mean, this stuff is seriously very powerful. It's almost too powerful, it's not even worth it. But we're gonna see what kind of effect it has if I don't fall asleep. But today was a good day. Of course, very tired. And it's definitely a test of your will. And it's one of those experiences like, fasting or going for a long run, where you begin to appreciate what you don't have. The contrast that we experience from not having something I feel is quite valuable. One thing I have noticed is a greater sense of presence within. I think when your mind is exhausted or your body is tired, you don't really have the extra energy to give to so many thoughts. And what you will find is that for those people who think a lot, you'll almost always kind of be in the state of exhaustion. And of course it depends on the individual, but a lot of people don't realize that their lack of energy comes because they're always thinking all the time. They're always ruminating about different things. I will say one very interesting thing I noticed today is that after I microdosed on a bit of chocolate, it was almost like my energy was restored. I hadn't been asleep for over 24 hours, but somehow I gained more energy than usual. I think the reason that this is because, let's take magic mushrooms for instance. Mushrooms are a very special kind of being. There are some mushrooms that if you take a bite, you will almost instantly be killed. And what's interesting is that magic mushrooms, for instance, they actually do kill you. It's just they don't kill you on the physical level. It's almost like they trick your mind into believing you're dying or that you're dead. And what this does is that it causes, let's just assume, because I'm not a scientist, that the pineal gland opens up and the flood of consciousness comes through. And when we experience that flood of consciousness, we experience extremely high states of being, high states of awareness that can be extremely healing and therapeutic. It's like hitting the refresh button on yourself in a way. And what I've come to find is that sleep is the exact same thing. Because if you think about it, in the morning, when our eyes are closed, light comes in, it goes through our eyelids, and it triggers something in our brain to push out consciousness into higher states of awareness. We are born into the day, so to speak. We arise, and then at night, in the darkness, our brain is triggered to retract consciousness back into our body and back into the source. And so what happens in deep sleep is that there is almost a constant flood of consciousness going throughout our bodies at all times. And this is what heals and restores us. And then as the cycle continues and we rise back up to waking consciousness, that is when we have the most vivid dreams, because our body and our brain is full of charged energy. And what I find is that when I've been waking up after a dream, I'm almost completely awake. Like my mind is energized. I think it's because it is. But to bridge the gap between the magic mushrooms, death, and sleep, is that sleep is a lot like death, in which the pineal gland may open and flood ourselves with consciousness. And I believe this will happen every time you trick your body or trick your mind into believing that it's dead. They say when you go into a dark room for multiple days, after a certain point, you begin to get a flood of images. And so this was all just to bring it back to this interesting idea how earlier around noon, I was infused with this strong energy, a strong motivation to go out and do things, like the life was put back inside me. Because if you're up for 24 hours, you don't really feel like doing anything. You just feel like, well, going to sleep. I think if people were responsible and knew the power of psychedelics, then to have microdosing as a kind of routine, like a nootropic or a supplement, would greatly change one's life. Very powerful stuff. And of course you don't want to overdo it, but I find there's no reason not to have this as a tool in our tool belt. No different than caffeine or supplements. So we'll see how this night goes. And we'll see you in 12 hours. Alright, so it's just about 48 hours with pretty much no sleep. Almost there. And I've got to say that I actually feel pretty good. Not in like a healthy way, but in a way that my brain is just too tired to produce any thoughts. And so there's a lot of peace. Plus I've taken about 10 cold showers so far, so things are going pretty good. I have questioned myself on what is the point of this, but we'll see what happens. I've taken 2 more doses of silent Capensis. Should be building up pretty nice. But I did realize that if I go to bed now, it's 10 a.m. in the morning, and that's kind of gonna ruin my sleep schedule moving forward. I mean, even though I've kind of already ruined it, you just want to get started on the right foot, you know what I mean? So it looks like I'm gonna have to wait another 12 hours. I did get one message from the universe yesterday, and maybe somebody will be able to decipher it. I've come to my own kind of general conclusions, but I'm still unsure. One second. So when I was on my way to Walmart yesterday, one of the first things I saw, first there was one car don't know if you'll be able to see this. First there was one car with the license plate 8GLF888, and to me I always see that as representing like abundance or money. And as soon as I saw that, another car came behind it, and its license plate was 6HOL777, and on the license plate cover it said, "In Christ we trust." And so all of these things are very relevant in my life, but I just haven't exactly deciphered what it means. Usually I look up the acronyms of the letters, for instance, GLF. I'll type in ChatGPT and see if there's anything that stands out that would relate to, for instance, money or abundance. And then HOL, I think they were going for the word whole, but I'm not sure. What I came to so far was that I rearranged the words, and I came to the words Golf HL, and HL stands for high launch. So I assumed that maybe there was some kind of symbolism or pattern in the sport of golf, and then a high launch is like starting something with enthusiasm, energy, or momentum. And so who knows, usually it's not about if there's actually any meaning, it's about the meaning that you give to it, because the universe knows the way that you react and the ways that you think. But I don't know, could be anything. It's good to keep an open mind. But yeah, it will be very interesting to see what kind of dream I have after all of this. I would say that this experience has definitely brought to the surface more things within myself that I can face. And I think it just comes to the fact that when you're in any stressful situation, you're forced to face who you really are. Because you can always kind of wear the mask when things are going easy, when you have the energy to put the effort into something. But when you have no energy, when you're tired, you're a lot more honest, I think. And actually, the experience so far has been pretty profound. I've come to some pretty deep and interesting realizations. Mostly just things about me personally. And I would say it's been fun actually exploring myself through this kind of extreme meditation. I was originally going to fast for this period of time, but that didn't happen. Maybe I'll do it next time. But yeah, just been chilling. Time has still been going by pretty fast. Just been watching movies. Definitely cannot sit still and do nothing. I haven't really been doing too much meditation either. I don't want to risk falling asleep. But the cold showers have definitely been very, very nice. So we'll see how today goes. See what adventures await. Because there's magic in every day, but we're often just too not aware enough. So I'll be back in about 12 hours. Let's see what happens. So we've just about made it to hour 60. About 17 more minutes left. And I have to say that I actually feel very fantastic. I feel very peaceful and rather joyful. And of course, I could never, in good conscience, recommend that anybody else do this, because there are obviously health risks. Sleep is the most important thing that one can do for their health. But it has been quite the interesting experience. I mean, the whole thing has been one psychedelic trip. And surprisingly, with all the doses and the lack of sleep, the hallucinations haven't been nothing crazy. I'm seeing a bit more tonight, but it's always just that kind of things moving in your periphery. I guess I have noticed it's happening pretty much all day. And it does trip you out because it's like, oh, there's a fly or there's something there, and then you look at it and there's nothing, and it's like, oh, yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna do this again sometime. But don't do this at home. Leave it to the professionals, okay? Yeah, I feel really good. Maybe because I know I'm gonna go to sleep, but definitely feel closer to the universe. I mean, it's the whole time it's been one synchronicity after another. But also I've been taking a large amount of dream psychedelics, so it could have something to do with it. I've taken all the dosages that I've planned, but I do have one more capsule here. So we're gonna flip heads or tails. So which one do you think it's gonna be, heads or tails? Heads, I do it. Tails, I don't. This is the last one. I'll show you. This is completely legal, not illegal. You can buy this anywhere. Don't do it. But it is very powerful. Don't mess around. Before I move on, I do want to say one thing, is that don't ever fool around with psychedelics. If you do not take any kind of psychedelic with extreme respect, then you will be in for a rough ride. Because all psychedelics are extremely powerful. So do not be careless with your own mind. Trust me, I have done many foolish experiments with my consciousness. And yet here we are. Oh, it looks like it's heads. The spirits have chosen. Again, very legal. Yeah, don't be stupid. Do your research. Question your intentions. For instance, because I can say that I'm looking for some kind of spiritual guidance or spiritual wisdom. And even, looking for wisdom for my own self and my own life. But I think in truth, I'm just having fun. That it's not really that big of a deal. It's not really that serious. But, that is why I have also gotten myself into trouble with my own mind through the use of psychedelics. So don't follow in my footsteps, please. And so the last video will be tomorrow, and we will see if I have experienced a dream. I mean, I can't imagine not having a dream. I've been dreaming every day for weeks. 2.5 days of sleep deprivation. The mind, the brain will surely compensate. And I have actually no idea how those African dream roots will function because I haven't gone into sleep yet. So I don't know if they just build up, or I took 2 doses of the galantamine, and with that one you definitely experience some slight changes in the waking life. Galantamine is almost like the acid of dream psychedelics. It's just very strong, very potent extract. And look, dreams are all fun and nice until they're not. I mean, I have had horrifying nightmares, which are not really that all uncommon necessarily, but I have not felt fear in a dream in a long time, and yet have experienced many times where the dream was so far more disturbing than anything I could ever see in real life. And I guess I would say I have felt fear. Certain nightmares. One of the last kind of dreams, I think like a week or 2 ago, I had allegedly killed a person and left some evidence of that fact at the crime scene. And I remember there was just this tension and this guilt and this feeling like, oh man, I'm gonna get caught. And I remember thinking, but I don't remember doing this. I don't remember how I got here. And then I specifically remember saying to myself, and I don't know if this is a dream or if this is real life. Because I believed with 100% certainty that it was real life. One thing I'll also note is that during this time, I have been playing subliminal recordings constantly in the background, mostly with binaural beats and nature sounds, rain sounds. And the reason I did this is because when you're sleep deprived, you have a more and more difficult time rising into higher brainwave states. So for instance, when you're in a beta brainwave state that is, let's just say 12 to 30 hertz cycles per second, that means your experience of reality is going to be very focused. You're going to be very awake and alert. Whereas if you are in an alpha brainwave state, let's say for instance 9 hertz, and this is a oversimplification, but let's just say the dominant wave is 9 hertz. Your experience of reality is going to be, you're going to be awake, but you're going to be relaxed. You're just going to be chill. You're not going to be so uptight and like spazzy, you know what I mean? You can actually tell where people's brainwaves are operating at just by their demeanor. And then as you get lower into theta, and this is kind of, I think, where the magic happens, because theta is the state in which we dream in, but theta can also emerge in the waking state, and I have no doubt that it does when you are sleep deprived. Because if you imagine your body is trying to retract into delta, into lower states, but you are preventing that from happening. And what you will find is that the lower in brainwave states that you go, the less there is separation from reality. And the higher brainwave states you go, the more there is a sense of self, a sense of self-identity, a sense of separation. And so here we come to the contrast of what is active learning, which is studying, it's being focused, it's learning new things, say from a book or in school. And then you have passive learning, in which information is just coming at you. There's no effort, and it is being received. And so this is why, for instance, children are able to learn 3 languages and it not be like this difficult thing. But for an adult to learn just 1 language, you have to really be going at it for a long time. Or you have to put yourself in an environment where you're always having to speak that language. And so the reason why I'm playing the subliminals is because the more you are in a theta brainwave state, the more you can passive learn. Information goes directly into the subconscious mind. There is no conscious mind so heavily preventing the information to be received. So the information just more easily flows down into the subconscious. It's easier to reprogram your subconscious mind, let's say the first thing when you wake up and the last thing before you go to bed. This is what all manifestation is about. And so as I go to bed tonight, I will be playing a dream affirmation subliminal that I've created. And I'll put these subliminals in the description if you'd like to check them out. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think the environment is primed for receiving spiritual wisdom through dream. I mean, I've always kind of been that shaman archetype. So I would say I'm prepared for whatever comes. But hopefully tomorrow we will have a cool story to talk about. And perhaps we can uncover the patterns and the symbolisms together. And maybe in this I may not only learn something about myself, but we may learn something about the universe as a whole. Because unity is the highest truth. And so when we learn about ourselves, we learn about others and the world around us and the universe. And the more we learn about others and the universe and the world around us, the more we come to understand ourselves. And so I'm excited to share with you my findings. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue taking the Silene Capenses every day until the spirits say, you need to stop coming back here. And then I'll be like, okay. And maybe we can make it a thing to talk about dreams here. That might be cool. Because I love dreams. Even though or I might say on the spiritual path, it's not exactly aligned, or better yet, it can be a bit of a distraction on the spiritual journey, let's say. Or when you're focused on becoming one with consciousness, what dreams do is that, in a way, I believe they create karma in the body. Because things are happening in the dream, and there are emotions happening. There are experiences. And what you will find is that the dream often has profound effects on our waking life. But if you want the highest spiritual teachings, or if you want the highest spiritual goal, let's say, even though that's like an oxymoron, you want to first come to the state of no mind, of nothingness, of emptiness. And that only occurs in the deepest state of sleep. And then it is from this state of nobody, no thing of nothingness and emptiness in which we can build the foundation of our life upon. Because of course our existence here in this material world on this planet, we were not designed either to be so fully in the world and lost in the illusion, and neither reject the world and try to run and hide toward the spiritual. Of course, the spiritual realm is the eternal realm, and that is why we build our foundation upon it. You do not want to build the foundation of your life on the character that you are playing in your roles in society. I would say, not even as a man or a woman. You don't need to get your worth from your gender. And I personally, a lot of people won't look at it this way. You don't need the identity of being human either. I mean, you are a human. But the whole point is that you never want to be attached to lesser truths. Because what you are attached to, you become a slave to. And so if you're a slave to a lesser truth, if you become one with a lesser truth, then your experience of reality, your well-being will match that lesser truth. And so if you are very heavily attached to this body, to things that are always changing, to things that are temporary, then you will be heavily aligned with death. And when death arises, we will experience with absolute vividness all the suffering and the pain that comes along with it. Because the hell will be happening to us, who we perceive ourselves to be. But the moment you align yourself with the eternal, with the highest truth, that which does not change, then it doesn't matter what happens to everything else. You could be locked up in a concentration camp and be absolutely free. But most people are probably not there yet. And I'm not saying that I'm there, I'm just saying it's possible. And so I'm looking forward to the future together. I will see you in about 12 hours. Yeah, we made it. 60 hours and 10 minutes. Would you look at that? It's gonna be a good sleep. So you're never gonna believe what happened. Guess what? You're never gonna believe what happened. The dream. The dream experiment failed. What I mean is that I didn't have any crazy prophetic dreams. But what I did discover, I actually find far more interesting than having any kind of cool dream. But first, my short-term memory was greatly affected, whether by the sleep deprivation or the substances. And so it was very difficult to remember the dreams. What was interesting is that, well, there are two cycles one may look at as the deep dreams and the lighter state dreams. I've heard that the deeper dreams, and this makes sense to me, is that they're going to more reflect deeper patterns in the unconscious, whereas the lighter dreams will be less rich in deep meaning. But it is almost impossible to remember the deep dreams. But what I found was that I had woken up in the middle of the night, and in the moment upon waking up, I thought, wow, I'm not dreaming at all. This is crazy. I'm pretty surprised by this. And then a moment later, I realized, oh, I actually had been dreaming. Not only had I been dreaming, but I had been dreaming for a while. And I only remembered the very last, let's say, second of it. And so I tried real hard to see if I could kind of put the pieces back together. And that, it was futile. So eventually I let go and just went back to sleep. But the only thing I was able to get out of the deep dream was this idea of reconciliation between two parts. And I couldn't remember exactly the details of the two parts to be reconciled. The story involved a different person who wasn't me, and it seems I could only tap into the underlying blueprint of that particular pattern rather than being able to remember the actual details. So here are a few definitions of the word reconciliation. The first one that stood out to me is the action of making one view or belief compatible with another. That is definitely on track. The sacrament of reconciliation is a sacrament of healing. The word reconciliation means to be at peace again. Those definitions definitely represent a common theme in dreams. That almost seems to be one of the greatest purposes of dreams, is to allow us to reconcile the different aspects of our unconscious, bring them into the light, and then integrate them. Too bad I forgot what the parts that needed to be reconciled. But actually, what I find that the information is still going to be there whether you remember it or not. So simply by thinking about the process and contemplating it, there is a play between the unconscious and the conscious mind. So in terms of reconciliation, the reconciliation of certain parts, there's a high likelihood that there are two parts of me that are at odds, that are currently incompatible. And the thing is, for me, one of my talents is to hold two different traits or two different ideas that are opposites, and to not be attached to either one, and then to understand each one. And so in this case, the problem is likely rather deep if it's been able to evade my conscious mind. There was also another word when I was trying to put the pieces back together, the word of relationships. And another definition for reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relations. And I would say that's probably an area of my life that I have a bit of trouble with. I mean, I've always been balanced between introversion and extroversion, but I've always been much more heavily leaned toward being an introvert. And I don't really like being around people all that much. And it's not that I don't like people, it's just that I feel I can only be around people in the proper dosage. Like, no matter what shortcomings somebody has, their defaults, if I'm only around them once in a while, that's not a problem to me. I've tried to let go any kind of superiority complex of I'm doing better than you, I don't want to be around you because, you know, you're negative energy or you're degenerate, or in small dosages I have no problem. But spending a lot of time around people is almost intolerable, especially for people on the spiritual path. Because what you find is that But one thing I will say is that if you are introverted before the spiritual path, then get ready to be like 100 times more introverted. And then eventually you'll have to balance the scales. Because what you find is that there's a reason there is something called a satsang, which is a group of people on the same spiritual path. And so you can kind of talk and be around people with the same energy. But most people who aren't on that path are almost completely unrelatable. Because what you find is that the things that people choose to waste their energy on, the things that people talk about, the things that people think about, people get irritated and angry and frustrated over nonsense. People are sometimes so lost in the story in their head, in this imaginary world that they've created and then projected on the external world, that when you listen to them talk, it's just like, it's almost like schizophrenia. It's almost like you're looking at a schizophrenic, except the schizophrenic is a normal person. It's calm, it's the common, it's the norm. And to other people, I assume that I probably look like the schizophrenic or the crazy person. Which is fine, I don't care. But in a world full of people who are sleepwalking, the one who is awake is deemed the crazy one. But what's funny about my particular role, or my character, is that I am actually both extremely awake and at the same time extremely blind. I see the world very clearly a lot of the times, and at the same time I've embraced the fact that I know nothing. And right there, I think that's the perfect realization, and I hope you may find this useful, the act and the process of realization in real time, that my unconscious or conscious identification with the fool, someone who is both the precursor to the savior and also a very unintelligent primitive, someone who is extremely awake and also extremely unconscious. This unconscious identity, let's say, is represented or manifested in the material world as my inability to be around others for any long periods of time. Because there is an underlying repulsion of the behaviors of most people. So let's say I'm a spiritual person, right? And so I have all of these ideas and values of what I hold to be good. And then I see someone who wastes their time and their energy talking about negative things, talking about the news, things, gossiping. They say they spend their time getting intoxicated or engaging in degenerate behavior. If you have a spiritual identity, this kind of sense of moral righteousness, you will immediately become repulsed and you will reject those kinds of things. But when you have a strong aversion or a strong repulsion against something, you also have a strong attachment to it. And so long as you have an attachment to something, no matter how hard you try and escape, it's like a rubber band where you have the attachment holding onto one side and you have your identity trying to escape. And then eventually the tension and the pressure of life becomes too much for the ego identity, for the ego character. And so the moment the ego breaks, and you slam back into the attachment. And this is what happens when people go down a downward spiral, when they too heavily indulge in addictions and things like that, self-destructive behavior. And so, in a way, because of that attachment, in my experience, trying to avoid and reject the kind of ugliness that human beings can manifest a lot of the time, you try and avoid it, but then you snap back to it. And because there was all this tension, because the tension of avoiding, you don't just engage in, let's say, normal intoxicating behavior. You don't just, say drink a few beers here and there, or, drink a 6-pack every night, because that's what I've decided to do with my life. It's, you fall into this extreme violent snapback of, let's say in this case, intoxication, where you become worse than the person that you were judging. So let's say I judge another person for drinking, and I don't like drinking, so this is not really a problem, but this is just an example. Say if I don't like someone who's drinking, and I say that is degenerate behavior, I am better than that, and I try to avoid it. But secretly, somewhere deep down, I enjoy drinking, or I get something out of it. And so there's an attachment, and so the more I try to avoid it, when the pressure of life comes, when stress comes, I fall back into a kind of default state. And so, unlike the person who, say, drinks a 6-pack every night, I violently snap back into an indulgence of getting absolutely blacked out, say for multiple days even. And so that same behavior I was judging that other person for or trying to avoid, I become lower than that person. That is the danger of attachments and avoiding things. And that is why the archetype of the fool is so important. And I really was just reading Carl Jung the other day, and this is where I got this kind of information, but in this sense, in this example, there is clarity. You realize that this kind of behavior is not good and it should be transcended. Self-destructive behavior must be eliminated. And so at one end, you've become identified with the transcendent, or a higher moral spiritual path, and this is good. But at the same time, one hasn't let go of their attachment of it. And so there's a strong polarity, there's a strong energetic play between these two forces. The forces of extreme clarity and extreme ignorance. Whereas the person who has accepted their life as, I'm just going to drink a 6-pack every night, they're in the middle, and so they've depolarized themselves. There's no energy to it. And so it seems the fool is the precursor to the savior, because in experiencing the dynamic, the strong polarity, you are able to escape, or you're able to evolve and grow more easily. You know the pathway forward, what you should do, but then for some reason you can't escape it, and so you go back to the other polarity. You become worse than the, let's say, average degenerate, and you are in this place of extreme suffering, what you might call hell. And in this extreme suffering, more information, more knowledge, more awareness comes into being. Because if you think about it, from the beginning of time, if you saw your friend get eaten by a mountain lion, you would not want that thing to happen to you. And so you would immediately become more aware. You'd begin thinking more. You'd begin paying attention more. Your body would be put into a heightened state of awareness. And this, I believe, is how human consciousness developed. And so whenever you're experiencing a lot of suffering, this is the perfect opportunity to become more aware. This is the theme of going down into the underworld, the hero's journey. And in the underworld you find the secrets, you find the boons, the information that is needed to help the people back on the surface. And so the hero arises back and shares the secrets with the world. And it appears that is what I am doing. And we are all heroes and fools in our own way. These forces are within us. And so this idea of reconciliation, the coming together of two parts, seems to be the reintegration of the lower primitive aspects of myself. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's not just emerging right now at the moment. It's just I'm going through the process of thinking about it. But when you're a spiritual person, or when you are very creative and even a religious person, you try and go towards a higher spiritual path, there is perhaps the most dangerous trap that one falls in. And that is, like I said, the attachment and the aversion. It's the running away and the avoiding of certain kinds of behavior. Because, like I said, there's that violent snapback effect. And so in order to avoid that danger, one depolarizes themselves by integrating certain traits within the shadow. And remember, this is happening on so many different dimensions at a time. So in this situation, I'm talking strictly about relationships. And so if I'm avoiding relationships because I cannot tolerate being around people for any significant amount of time, then to integrate what I have rejected in myself, let's say those degenerate behaviors that we can often judge others for, rather than embracing the kind of degenerate behavior, one, in a sense, takes it easy, stops being so uptight about it, kind of unclenching of the butt, and to just kind of relax. And then also to perhaps find a relationship in which you are forced to be around someone a lot. And this will allow to work through any kind of unconscious patterns and traits. So to kind of re-clarify, because my thoughts can sometimes be all over the place, the idea of reconciliation, in this particular case, relationships. In a subtle way, let's say I judge other people for engaging in the certain actions that I am specifically trying to avoid. So I'm trying to transcend to a higher moral state. And so therefore I avoid relationships with other people. But as a human being, you cannot reject any part of yourself, and relationships are obviously very fundamental to being human. And to reconcile, to integrate parts of the shadow, first you look at what are the behaviors of judgment that I'm trying to avoid, or that you are trying to avoid in perhaps your situation. And so, in this case, those behaviors I can depolarize by relaxing and being so uptight about trying so hard to be good, trying so hard to be better than everyone else. You know, have a piece of cake because it tastes good, not because you're trying so hard to be healthy. You know, smoke a joint every once in a while. Don't embrace it by trying to indulge in it every single day, and don't avoid it because you think it's the right thing to do. Because in truth, anything, any experience, any behavior can be extremely useful. It's about the intention in which you use it. So there is a depolarization, and you return a bit to the middle. And so you stop judging the other people so much, you can accept them for who they are. And you will no longer have any kind of violent snapbacks of extreme avoidance and extreme indulgence. And in this sense, you can restore the balance of relationships. And I guess I'm talking about myself, but I can restore the balance of relationships in my life. Because rather than judging people for who they are, you can accept them, and you keep with you the original truth, that higher desire that kept you moving forward. And that is, well, I can accept you for who you are, but that doesn't mean I can be around you all the time. Because the fact is still the fact that the people who you're around, you will take on their energy. I can keep and manage my energy far better when I'm alone. And here you may find or may see that the avoidance of relationships, the avoidance of people, is rooted in the inability to have strong boundaries, the inability to speak your truth. And so we kind of get in the habit of blaming other people for affecting our lives. But really it comes down to our inability to create strong boundaries, to know who we are, and then to be able to confidently speak that truth with conviction. And so instead of being an example of the truth, we just kind of avoid certain situations. And so the shadow is integrated through depolarization. And first, depolarizing one's own actions by getting rid of the attachment of avoidance. And this is an identity level change. So I ease up a bit, go back toward a depolarized state. I can accept other people for who they are. And then to keep moving forward, to be in alignment with truth, I must integrate the traits of strong boundaries and being able to speak my truth clearly. And this is beneficial for everybody. And so this is the healing process of reconciling relationships. What I just expressed was, you could look at it as tuning the solar plexus chakra, coming into truth and into balance. Because polarity is imbalance, but polarity is necessary for the dynamic play of energy. Without polarity, there is no charge. Without a proton or an electron, there is no charge. A neutron is neutral. And so the game of life is often being in a highly polarized state and then depolarizing, and then being in a highly polarized state and then depolarizing, integrating the rejected and repressed aspects of ourselves to develop into a more fully whole person. Perhaps it's the individuation process where we develop ourselves into a strong, complete individual who's not lacking in any area. One may look at this as balancing and fine-tuning the energy systems or the chakras. Do you see how, with only the tiniest fragment of a dream, one can realize so much about oneself? But dealing with dreams is difficult because it does take some effort. It takes effort to consciously choose to write them down, and then to think about them, and then to speak about them. So I guess I lied about not having any deep and meaningful dreams. Do you see how the conscious mind can trick you? A lot of us engage and fall for that trickery because we make up our minds about something, and then when we make up our minds about something, we no longer need to pay it any more attention because we've accepted that as the reality. That is why it's important to let go of the attachments, to be able to always be open to the truth. And honestly, I didn't really even expect this. because of course at the beginning I assumed that I had no deep and meaningful dreams. But in reality, the spirit can guide with very few pieces of information. 99% of all of it was forgotten immediately. And yet all that was needed was the 1% that survived, because it was the only 1% that mattered. And so next, I will explore the more profound experiences that I encountered. So first, I'd like to note the obvious negative side effects of this whole process. And that is drinking a lot of caffeine and staying up for 60 hours. I mean, it gives you a headache. I noticed my body was a lot more stiff. Obviously, you're going to be irritated by pretty much everything. But at this point in my journey, I actually don't mind, man. Because my whole game is that, you allow the triggers to come up, and how much are you able to remain in a non-reactive state. And so that wasn't really much of a problem. There's no attachment to the irritation, so I'm not really experiencing it. I'm not really experiencing it. Whereas what most people do is that they say, I am irritated. They become one with that emotion, and so they experience irritation. But when you practice meditation, when you practice being non-reactive, there is a separation between the irritation and you. There's no identification with it. So you are here, irritation is here. Irritation comes, irritation goes. Irritation comes, it goes. But you are the same. You never move. Whereas what most people do, irritation comes, I'm irritated. Now the irritation brings me to all these different directions. Situation comes up, I am angry. Now my anger pulls me in all these different directions. I have a thought. I'm having a negative thought. Now my negative thought pulls me in all these different directions. And so the more you practice remaining in this state, the state of non-attached awareness, the more you tap into the stillness in the present moment, the less all external factors have any effect over you. And what I mean by external factors, I don't mean just the physical world. I also mean the mental and spiritual world. Because everything that we experience comes after us. Because if we are experiencing something, then by definition, whoever is experiencing it has to be before the experience. So our true nature is before all things. And of course, in the mind, it's much different. It's a much different reality than the external world. There is no distance. So when I say before, it's not the same before that you would use to describe something in the external world. It's a definition of the word that is of the highest subtlety. But I think it's easy enough to understand that we don't have to get too spiritual with it. So the first thing I noticed last night that really caught my attention is that when I woke up from sleep in the middle of the night, there was a strong attention toward what I was feeding my mind. And this notion became highly important, because it is very important. When I was watching a movie trying to stay awake, this scene in the movie was just very negative. just was it's very dark. And I realized in that moment, it's like, well, I don't want to see that. Why am I watching this? Why am I feeding my mind with this garbage? And what we find in our daily lives is that certain thoughts bubble up all the time. And these bubbles of thoughts come from seeds that were planted by the information that we feed our minds. And so it's like, why am I consciously giving myself negative thoughts? Or unconsciously? By feeding my mind with garbage, I'm setting myself up for suffering in the future. And so what was conveyed to me was, very much value the information you're feeding in your mind. Pay close attention. Listen to other people, because what other people feed their minds, they're going to purge it onto you. So see if somebody spends their time feeding on garbage, and the answer you come to will be the determining factor of how much time you spend with that person. You want to be around people who feed their minds, who take care of their bodies and their minds by feeding it healthy stuff. Because if you're always feeding on negativity, you're going to be a negative person and you're going to bring other people down. Nobody wants to be around negative people besides other negative people. So this area of our lives deserves a lot of attention, because things all the time are competing for our energy. We have to decide and allocate our energy towards certain things, and things that are negative take our energy without giving us anything in return. And so if you want to live the best possible life, you have to remove your energy from all the things that are negative and only give them to the things that are neutral and positive. And so one has the ability to neutralize all negativity. And this is how we become masters over our own life. The more you give your energy towards things that give you more energy in return, it's very simple, the better your life will be. But you see, most people are living lives of quiet desperation because they're giving their energy to nonsense. They're feeding nonsensical thoughts. They're having negative emotional reactions about silly things. You look at people's lives and they waste so much energy. And I believe wasting energy is the only true sin. Wasting energy is the sin of all sins. But you see, when you become a master over yourself, when you are able to neutralize all negativity by remaining non-reactive, by remaining non-attached, then every single experience can be neutral or positive. Because it's about the frame of mind in which you are approaching a situation. So let's say even if you are stuck in addiction and self-destructive behaviors, you can take away the negative charge by reframing your perspective. By using a negative situation, a self-destructive behavior, for your highest growth. I mean, this is alchemy at its finest. You transmute the negativity, the self-destructive behavior, into a self-constructive behavior. And I know this because this is what I have done. Because all negative experiences, all addictions and vices, they're trying to teach us and reveal something about ourselves. But people get so caught up in the emotions of it, into the avoidance of it and the fear, that they don't stop and pay attention to what this thing is revealing about myself. People take things so personally. And the more you're caught in this kind of personal identity, the the more blinded you will be to the truth. That's why it's of the utmost importance to let go of our attachments to our identity, because then we can learn, we can evolve, we can adapt. Because with attachment, there is a lack of growth. So be very careful what you feed your mind and what you allow others to feed your mind with. Even me. You have to be careful of just accepting and embracing everything that I say, because my videos are relaxing. They have meditation music. It's easier to fall into a more receptive state of being. And so that is why I warn, just don't even listen to what I am saying. Listen to how the voice within you responds to the words that I speak. Because I am just a man that has the potential to lead you astray. But the voice within you, that true guiding compass, can never take you down the wrong path. So long as we are able to listen to it, because it is a whispering voice, whereas all other voices are loud. That is why we must become still within. Meditation is the vehicle to stillness. When you begin paying attention to the information that you consume, whether on your own time or by other people, you become a master of your own energy. And when you can become a master of your energy, you become a master of your life, a master of the universe. The next profound thing that I realized was that it's not actually about the dream. It's about who is dreaming. And I never realized this before because, as a person, you think, oh, I'm going to have cool dreams, or I'm going to have prophetic dreams in which I can share with other people. But then you realize that there is no dream. The dreamer and the dream are one. You are not a person having a dream. You are a dreamer experiencing itself. In a dream, all the mountains, all the trees, all the people, everything is one. And to get lost in this idea of being separate from the dream, that is the illusion. And so dreaming is always an act of self-discovery. It's never, I'm having a dream, or I had a dream. It's I am the dream. And I am experiencing myself. And so, for those who want to, say, get into the habit of interpreting their dreams, which is a very, very powerful practice, one must orient their attention towards what is this symbol, what is this pattern, what is this information revealing about me? And because dreams often work with the unconscious, most of the time the answers are things that we are not yet aware of. So it's perhaps not always the most obvious answer that is the right one in this case. So dreams must be dived into deeply and explored, and one must use their intuition to say, yes, this is right, or I'm not so sure. Dreams reveal a lot about ourselves. One could say that the purpose of dreams is self-discovery, but really I believe it's the environment in which the conscious and the unconscious become one. Whereas in waking life, the unconscious and the conscious are separate. It has been called the veil of forgetting. And that when we die, we remember all of our past lives, all of our experiences. And only in this particular dimension in which we are existing in do we forget the nature of reality, the nature of truth. Some say that is the purpose of why we are here, that Earth is a school in which we learn about ourselves. We learn about the universe, about others, about the world around us. But we know all is one, just like in the dream, and the separation is the illusion. And so when you begin to orient your life towards self-discovery, you begin to become aligned with the highest truth, and life becomes a fun game in which you are always exploring yourself, exploring others, exploring the universe and the world. But you're really just exploring God. And it's really just God exploring itself. And if you think about it, let's just say you're an introvert, right? If you're an introvert or have introverted tendencies, let's say, let's scrap that. Most people find themselves to be more interesting than anything else. Because even extroverted people who enjoy being around others, yes, they have a more tendency towards selflessness, I believe. But what I see that extroverts or extroverted-minded people, what they enjoy, it's not just other people, but it's the relationship they have to others. And so whether you're introverted or extroverted, you still perhaps find yourself more interesting than anything. And if you take into consideration what I said previously, then it doesn't really matter what you are interested in, because anything that you are interested in is yourself. Because we know that all is one. And so I would say embrace the act of self-discovery. Whether you want to discover yourself through looking within or in relationship to other people, but never lose sight of self-discovery. Because through self-discovery, you can adapt, you can evolve, you can change. You can live a life that you truly enjoy. Discover yourself. Find the truth. So by far my favorite experience of the night was that another moment in which I had temporarily woken up. I was faced with an extreme abundance of bliss and love. My whole body was bursting with love. I mean, really is the greatest possible experience in my estimation. And the words that came to mind spontaneously, because we have to remember, when we are in a deeper brainwave state, we don't really have so much the free will or the conscious ability to act. Things just kind of emerge, everything is kind of melted together. So what arose was the message: cultivate a vessel for receiving love. Build yourself into somebody who is able to allow love into their life, who is able to be open to love. Because love is the nature of the energy that gives life to all things. Love is the nature of consciousness. And if you can allow yourself to receive love, then your life will come into harmony. Because you will be aligned with life. You will be aligned with the source. You will be at one with God. And so what I did in this moment was again, not by really any conscious means, but I repeated in my mind, I said, I send this love to my family, to the people who are connected to me. And because, again, we are all one, I have no doubt that I was able to transmit this beautiful and powerful experience, this energy, and give it to the people that I love. And you have this power as well, sending love to other people. And perhaps I will never know the effects that this had, but I know that they are good, and I know that there cannot be no effect. And I am happy letting it go and moving on. But perhaps the most important thing we can do is to cultivate love and open our hearts. I've said that if you want more peace in your life, quiet the mind. If you want more joy and happiness, open the heart. And if you wish to find God, do both. So how might we open our hearts and receive love in our life? Now, I'm probably not the best person to tell you how to open your heart chakra, but I'll do my best. We can begin by focusing our attention on all the things that constrict our hearts, that prevents love from entering our lives. And when we can release these energy blockages, then I believe the flow of life comes into us naturally, the flow of love. And so, to get down to the nitty-gritty, to the foundations, letting go of the energy blockages involves letting go of our attachments to certain identities. And we will have conscious attachments and unconscious attachments. Typically, it's the unconscious attachments that get us into trouble. And so, we remember that the unconscious is the intelligence of our bodies, whereas the conscious is the intelligence of our mind that is created by the brain. And so, unconscious attachments, of course, arise because our body's job is to always keep us alive. Its job is to preserve our survival. And it will do this in a lot of ways that are damaging and unhelpful to the conscious mind. Because the unconscious, it being far older than the conscious mind, it has to kind of treat the conscious mind or the ego kind of like a child. It has to say, I know what's best. But you see, the unconscious mind is also blind. It cannot see clearly. That is the job of the conscious mind. And so the unconscious, the intelligence of our bodies, often makes mistakes. Mistakes that can cost us our lives, that can put us in a state of hell. And so we can spend our time doing the shadow work, going to therapy, discovering why we are the way we are, going through all our past traumas and experiences and realizing why we have these attachments. And that is good. I would say do that because that is a process of self-discovery. But I am much more of a fan of eliminating the past and the future and dedicating your entire being to be in the present. Because the present is the eternal, and the more we can align ourselves with the eternal, the more into harmony our lives will become. And so it's almost we don't even have to go back and heal ourselves. We don't have to create this magnificent future for ourselves. Because when we are in harmony with life, life seems to work itself out, seems to heal itself. Now again, I'm not saying don't go back into the past and deal with your trauma. For many people that will be necessary. I'm not saying stop going to therapy, because your individual life is your individual life, and what you need is going to be different than what I need and what everyone else needs. But what I have found in my own life, and I've also gone to the past, and for a lot of my experience, I've been lost in the past and lost in the future. But where I'm at now, the way I go about it right now, is that I focus my attention on the present moment, on the presence that is experienced, the inner spaciousness, and I resonate in this space for as long as I can, until the external world pulls me back into identification, in which I almost immediately realize that I've been caught and return back to the true state of being. What I find is that the things we need to heal from the past will emerge regardless. They will emerge in the form of triggering experiences or triggering people. And it is only in the present moment in which we can deal with this, or deal with the trauma of the past. And so the way I look at things is that rather than trying to go back deep into the past and figure everything out, we spend our energy in the present and allow the situations that will touch upon our trauma. These things will emerge, and only then can we deal with them. Because so long as we are not grounded in the present moment, we will get caught in reacting to things with negative emotions. That is why it's so important to have a perspective of self-discovery. Because when a negative situation emerges, we don't have to be like, oh, this sucks. We can say, who is it that is experiencing suckiness? And why? Why am I feeling negative emotions in this moment? Where am I attached? Where is the trauma? And so over time, the more we can be grounded in the present and align ourselves with that eternal nature that is our true being, this is what in spiritual circles is called, let's say, letting the karma run its course. It's the moment we stop creating karma in our lives, and that the rest of the karma can emerge so it can be let go. Muji often has put it like, when there's a fan spinning and you turn the switch off, there's still some momentum. It doesn't just stop immediately. But once you turn off the switch, it's already done. And you just kind of have to survive and embrace what emerges. And you see, most people never turn the switch off. The fan is spinning their whole lives. That is why they say it takes many lifetimes to become enlightened. But we all, in this day and age, have a very special opportunity where the most people who have ever been on this planet are able the greatest access to the truth. And with this comes a lot of false information. That is why it is up to the person, the individual, to very carefully cultivate the paradigm of the reality, or to shape their perspective. And so what I see is that when you shape your perspective towards self-discovery, you just can't go wrong. No matter what happens, it becomes a positive experience. And I've experienced this for myself. I mean, I've been living in a house that is extremely chaotic and negative, to the degree in which any normal person would not be able to probably last a week. I mean, I've woken up to walk into the kitchen where there are hundreds of maggots all over the floor. Everywhere. and they move fast, so they spread out. And the first thing that I thought, the thing that came to my mind was that scene from Dumb and Dumber where Jim Carrey talks about the name of his business, and he says, "I've got worms." So no matter what you experience, it's not the experience itself that creates negativity. It's our relationship and our reaction to the experience. It's easy with certain things that are extreme like that because, you're just so astounded by what you are currently experiencing. Like, it's almost like you can't even believe what you are seeing. And so humor is a very powerful way for us to take the negative charge out of situations. And the more we can preserve our energy from that which is negative, the more we cultivate positive energy. And so this is how we can create a powerful vessel for love, for the life force. It's like if you were a great pirate ship out on the ocean of life. On your journey, on this life's journey, you're going to have many experiences that damage the boat. You're going to hit rocks, there's going to be waves, there's going to be maintenance, and eventually there might even emerge holes in the body of the ship. And remember, the ship is the whole of our being, not just our actual bodies. And the holes in our ship kind of reflect the trauma, pieces of ourselves that have been left behind in the past. And if these things are not addressed, well, then there is leakages, or in this case there is water coming in. And the life force within us is directly proportionate to how smoothly our ship sails. And a ship cannot sail smoothly if there is water coming in, if there are energy leakages. And so to create the vessel for receiving divine abundance, for love, and for peace, we must take great care of managing ourselves. This involves energy management, healing the past, doing the shadow work, creating the individual that you wish to become, non-reacting to situations, neutralizing negativity, having healthy and good relationships with others, having strong boundaries, making sure your sexual instincts are satisfied in a healthy way, to not be in a mode of survival, to not be in fear, to have enough money to make sure that your life is comfortable, to put yourself in difficult and uncomfortable situations so that there is always this kind of tension forcing you to grow, not having to be forced to slave away your whole life, becoming free. We shape this vessel, this incarnation, into the greatest vehicle for consciousness that is our true self. And the more powerful our vehicle can be, the more consciousness can flow freely through us. This is how we change the world. This is how we heal the world. We must first heal ourselves. Focus your energy on addressing this first, rather than focusing on other people. Because if you can fix your own problems, you allow the space to help other people fix theirs. But if you have a never-ending stream of problems yourself, it's really difficult not to burden others with these problems, with the suffering. And people can only take so much, because they are too dealing with a never-ending stream of their own problems and burdens. So heal yourself so you can lift the burden off others. Don't put more burdens onto the people you love. This requires strength and courage, and a desire for higher states of being, even moral righteousness. You have the power in you right now to change the world for the better, to help the people you love, to heal people who are suffering, and to lift their burdens. Because not everybody has the strength to deal with them. Not everybody survives. And if you think about it, if you, in your whole life, saved one person from certain death, would that not be worth it? That person who you saved would be eternally grateful. And that person would go on to make their impact on the environment and the people around them. All because you took the time to heal yourself, to deal with your problems, to manage your energy. Not because you made a choice to go out and try and help and save the world, but because you made the choice to help and save yourself. We all have our own messes that we have to deal with. Don't go getting involved in the messes of other people while your life is still a mess. You'll just make a bigger mess. And never forget that you and I are responsible for the future of this planet. Every action that we take and the intentions in which we take those actions will cause ripple effects. But really the only thing that matters when it truly comes down to it is how much have we healed ourselves? How much have we dealt with our own problems to allow the energy to flow freely within us? To what degree have we released the energy blockages? And when we do so, we don't need to go out and help the world. We don't need to go out and help other people. By being alone, and I don't mean by being alone by yourself, I mean by being, the people who need you will be attracted into your life. And you will not have to take any effort. You will just be yourself, and you will heal other people. You will help other people by your presence. But only if you take care of yourself.